Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to pick up a recent thread on Boris Johnson, the possible Russian agent. Whether deliberately or just recklessly, Boris Johnson has been an incredibly useful Russian asset, and the news spotlight is turning once again on his role in forcing through the appointment of a Russian oligarch to the UK Parliament against the strongest objections from our own security services. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So more news is starting to emerge about the way Boris Johnson appointed a Russian oligarch to the House of Lords. Someone who is the son of a KGB officer who actively spied on the UK during the Cold War period. Just to give some very brief background, as I have discussed this several times before, including quite recently. So Evgeny Lebedev is a Russian oligarch whose wealth ultimately derives from Putin's network. Regardless of what his own personal views or motivations may be, I don't know the man personally, his position in life is effectively sponsored by the Russian state. Boris Johnson became good friends with him and in 2020 pushed to install him into the House of Lords. The House of Lords Appointments Committee rejected the move. "Are you barking?" they said. The security services were known to have objected to the proposal as well. Putting the son of a Russian agent and someone who himself could present a risk to national security into our parliament seemed like madness to everyone watching on. But news reports have revealed just how desperate the authorities were to stop this. So The Guardian reported that the House of Lords Appointments Committee appealed to the Queen directly to block the move. Now, of course, she didn't do so. The monarch has, in theory, certain powers, but they are monarchy-ending powers. You ever use them, there is no monarchy anymore. The monarch doesn't get dragged into politics by blocking the Prime Minister, the head of the elected Chamber of Parliament to all intents and purposes, in order to do what the unelected chamber wants. I mean, that is a constitutional no-no. But it showed the strength of feeling against this move to elevate Lebedev that they even tried. That's how desperate they were. It was the last roll of the dice. We need to stop this. How do we do it? Let's go and ask the Queen. Tortoise Media have also been reporting on the fact that MI5 agents visited Boris Johnson in person to explain their objections, but this was sort of largely known anyway. Not that it makes it any less shocking. There was no reason to appoint a Russian national to the UK Parliament at all. Like, if we put to one side the risks of doing so, the concerns of doing so with this specific individual, which I'll come back to, what was the supposedly beneficial reason for the appointment? How did it benefit us, the public, to have him there? What value does a foreign billionaire of dubious patronage who owns a newspaper present to the British public in Parliament? So if you're weighing up the pros and cons, like, you look at it and you go, well, what does Lebedev do for us? Nothing. Indeed, he hasn't even attended the House of Lords since making his initial entrance, which I actually suppose is a good thing. If all he actually wanted was the title and he hasn't been using his position for anything nefarious, well, the damage is arguably lessened, other than to the reputation of the House. I mean, how do we look to our allies abroad right now, particularly right now, when we've forced a Russian oligarch into our parliament against the strongest advice of our own intelligence services? But even internally, so let's consider a few things. First of all, Parliament ordered a review into Russian interference in our political system. They ordered the review because there was genuine concern about it. It's not just, oh, shall we just check if there is any? No, there was real concern. We ended up with a heavily redacted form of the report in which it said that the government had specifically prevented our intelligence services from looking for signs for it. Why? So that then, whenever the government were asked about it, whenever government ministers were asked about it, including the Prime Minister, they could say, I have seen no evidence of Russian interference in our politics. But if you ban MI5 and MI6 from showing you it, of course you're not going to see the evidence. When you say, I have seen no evidence of this as a minister, we are working on the presumption that you've looked for the evidence. No, they haven't. They blocked the evidence. We need a proper investigation into this once the Tories have left office. Second, Boris Johnson gave his security the slip during the Novichok crisis in order to get drunk with Russian agents and others at Lebedev's party house in Italy. Johnson was Foreign Secretary at the time, and the Russian state had murdered a UK citizen on UK soil. There is to be an inquest into the death beginning next year, 6 years afterwards. Third, Boris Johnson met the most fierce objections to elevating Lebedev Jr. to the House of Lords and still rammed it through. Now, for context, bear in mind that Johnson also tried to appoint Paul Dacre to the House of Lords and had the peerage rejected twice. Why did Johnson not force through Dacre's peerage but did for Lebedev? That's what I want to know. That's the question I would like answered. Why did he force Lebedev's appointment through but not Dacre's? Fourth, as I discussed recently, Boris Johnson has been caught with notebooks which include top secret information which may only be viewed by those with the highest clearance level. These notebooks are intended to inform his memoirs, and he would certainly have allowed those working on those memoirs with him to have seen those notebooks. Fifth, we've already been informed that Johnson was known to leave sensitive documents just lying around as Prime Minister, and security services were concerned about his lack of respect for the protocols. In short, Boris Johnson is a clear risk to national security. He was a known risk as Foreign Secretary, and of course as Prime Minister, because that was afterwards. He remains a risk because he has a big mouth, no sense of responsibility, and has been privy to a lot of sensitive information. So even if we suppose that Boris Johnson would not intend malicious harm to the country, he is still a risk because he just doesn't understand boundaries. But this isn't just about Boris Johnson. His own party knew he was a risk and still made him Foreign Secretary, then made him Prime Minister, knowing how much of a risk he posed. Conservative MPs know that he and others in their party have allowed Putin's network to infiltrate parts of our politics, and they have stood by and done nothing. And worse than that, they've prevented our security services from doing anything. And why? Well, they wanted to be an MP. That was more important than their country. We know that the odd Conservative is genuinely appalled by this. Julian Lewis, I think it was, wasn't it? Stitched up Boris Johnson to force the Russian interference report publication in the first place, albeit redacted, because Johnson had arranged to have it buried forever. But the vast majority of them, they know exactly what's going on and they've still allowed it. Never has so much damage been done to so many by so few. What needs to happen once they're gone is for the windows to be flung open on this. I appreciate that the problems may be so large and ingrained that no government will sensibly want everything to be made public for fear of the panic it would cause or the loss of trust it would cause in all institutions. But there has to be a robust investigation. What the public should know, they must know. And what needs dealing with behind the scenes must be attended to as well. Because when it comes down to it, having a Russian oligarch be made a lord may be by far and away the least of our problems where Putin's reach into Britain is concerned. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.